In the last hotfix for what we saw for the game, we had a round of buffs for a bunch of lower performing descendants. Luckily, one of said characters to get a nice buff was Keelan, seeing changes across the board damage wise affecting the initial damage of the skills, the damage over time aspects as well, and the additional damage should they be affected from acidic decay. Now while I've ran a couple of builds for Keelan before now for the channel, with the latest using his red mod forward mobile strike to get unlimited dashes, it's no longer the go-to build for him now due to the damage severely lacking compared to his base form. Fortunately though, I found a way around this to be able to make him one of the fastest and strongest mobbing characters in the game right now, so if you want to take down airships and bosses in a few dashes, you might want to stick around. So in today's video we'll be taking a look at my current recommended dashing build for Keelan, covering all things Arche Tuning, Reactors, gear, playstyle and everything else that you may need to know. As always, we do have a lot to cover, so if all that sounds good to you, then let's get to it. So where better for us to be able to start then by talking about the module side of things. Now there are a couple of things I do want to kind of like compare, because I still do have my mobile strike builds that pretty much exist here. The main kind of key differences that kind of come from this is that we used to have to use mobile strike to be able to get the unlimited dashes by going into his skill 3, and we wanted to increase the duration of that as well as reduce the cooldown so that we could essentially have those up on like just unlimited dashes all the time. And then we also used a combination of veterans tactics on top of that to be able to try and effectively get that stack back every 5 seconds so that we can then just activate it again and once again just go off on those unlimited dashes. Now unfortunately though, this has actually come at the detriment of damage multipliers, as you can kind of see here. So when it comes to the pierce damage, we are doing 320% to any enemies that are caught in our path, and we are also doing 1095.8% on the burst damage side of things. Now to give you an idea as to how the hotfix has changed that, if we swap on over to without a red mod, you can see that we are now doing 1595.4% if we are piercing through the enemies, which is huge, and then we're also doing an extra 1753.2% on the initial kind of like explosion radius that happens after we finish that dash. So it is pretty monumental as to how much difference there are in between the two builds, and because of the cooldown, as you can currently see, we do have the stack down to 7.2 seconds. We can easily and quite reliably get our dashes back, and with the right kind of positioning and everything like that, you absolutely can have unlimited dashes with this build. If you ever do run out, because obviously you can refund 15 seconds of this ability back, which obviously is more than enough to be able to recover 2 stacks if you do manage to land on all 3 enemies. If you ever do run out, you can always fall back onto your skill 4, and this is down to a 7.8 second cooldown as well, and we can also use this to be able to reset some of our onslaught stacks, so we can then just keep going through that kind of loop. Now it's the main kind of way to be able to throw in, because we aren't using veterans tactics, we can get away with firing off void corrosion every now and then, we can get away with firing off our septic gust, so we do have some really nice abilities that we can just consistently and constantly just crank out that DPS with this build. So by talking about the modules that we do have here, we do want to be able to lean into skill power, we do want to lean into cooldown, range, and anything else that can really just kind of like bump up our survivability as well as our DPS. The main kind of focuses here, we do have focus on toxic, we do have focus on singular, that's going to be giving us skill cooldown, and also really nice kind of like modifiers on that. We do go for toxic amplification. This is going to be giving us even more skill power to go into all those nice juicy multipliers right there. Mainly because Keelan is not a critical hit based character, so therefore going into this and just reducing our critical hit damage is going to be no water off our backs, so that's absolutely fine. We do then crank up the skill power even further by going into spear and shield, which is going to give us an extra 8.1% skill power, which opens up the skill power buckets, meaning we're going to be doing more damage. And then finally, just to finish it all off, just to kind of like crank out even more, we are going to go into Venom Cinctium, which is, it's been a while since we've been able to make a build that kind of uses these, but that gives us even more toxic skill power as well right there. So we are using that to be able to really just crank out the amount of DPS, and then we just round it all off with Preemptive Strike. Now the reason why this one's here is to be able to help us out with the mobbing side of things. Ideally with this build, we just kind of want to dash all the way through a room. We don't want to be turning around, we don't want to be using multiple dashes to be able to take down like the same target and anything like that. The only time that will ever come into effect is if it's against a boss or a stubborn elite. So to be able to use Preemptive Strike just really maximizes the chance of being able to do that, and we don't need veterans tactics for anything anymore, so we might as well just go for even more DPS right there. We round it all off with Nimble Fingers and MP Conversion just to help us with skill cooldown. Anything with max MP is going, like in terms of the negative, is going to be negligible. It's not going to do anything to be able to harm Keelan in any kind of aspects because he doesn't use MP in any of his build, and that's also the reason why we do go for Stim Accelerant. to be able to help us out by giving us more max HP over the blue side, but also, like I said, it has no downside because we aren't going to be reducing down our max MP because we have none. And then lastly, we have skill expansion just to be able to give ourselves that little bit of extra range. We do crank that up a little bit further by going into the Arche tree, but when it comes to the abilities, when it comes to max expandable range, this is only up to an additional 150%. By going into this and then going into the skill tree, we went the Arche tree and everything like that, it gets us to around about 120, 130 kind of percent range, which is pretty much more than enough essentially for what Keelan needs. So nice and simple, we've wrapped it all up when it comes to the modules. Let's start talking about some of the gear. Now when it comes to Reactor, you do have the option to be able to go for singular or fusion. We don't have anything like Inez to be able to go for the time of the hunting hounds to be able to transform everything all into one type. But because the main kind of bread and butter when it comes to your skills are going to be especially your dash and also a little bit of your skill 3 with this kind of setup, in that case I would recommend that you do go for a toxic singularity. Being able to go for toxic and singular to be able to boost up your skill 2 and skill 3 is really going to be cranking out the most amount of DPS. Obviously you can spam your skill 1, yes, okay, you can fall back on your skill 4, but ideally if you're doing this kind of setup right, you will be using your skill 4 to reset some of your stacks in terms of onslaught and not actually using it as a damage dealer. So therefore it makes most sense to be able to go more into the dashes to be able to kind of like increase the DPS that we're going to be chucking out. When it comes to the rolls at the very bottom though, ideally best in slot is going to be singular skill power boost ratio and skill cooldown. The skill cooldown is absolutely vital because this is going to be helping to obviously get your onslaught stacks to be able to get those down cooldown wise as low as possible. That helps you out with being able to refund additional stacks and things like that. It's just going to be so much easier to be able to have that uptime, to be able to have that upkeep when it comes to your skills. It's just pretty much one of the best roles to actually get when it comes to a reactor for most skill-based builds, but more importantly when it comes to Keelan, because he just has abnormally high cooldowns just to begin with when it comes to his skills, so therefore cooldown is going to be ideal. With that cooldown roll though, and with what we're going to be going into in the Arche Tuning, you can see that we are at an 87% skill cooldown, so we are 3% away from the cap. But this is more than enough to be able to get it, like I said, down to that 7.4 second kind of mark, and that allows you to be able to reset more than one stack if you can when it comes to the right kind of positioning with your dashes. Now, components wise, you do have a couple of options. Ideally, I think if you are trying to crank out the most amount of DPS, and this is where I've had the most success, you will be wanting a 4-piece of the Slayer set, at least for the time being, until the other kind of sets come in for next week's update. But Slayer is absolutely fantastic. The only downside usually that Slayer has is that skill cost for that 15%, and it does kind of come into it when it comes to the MP side of things. But because Keelan doesn't have an MP bar, he doesn't rely on any kind of MP side of things to be able to cast his abilities. The only issue you'll have with that is being able to spend the Acidic Infusion, which is your special resource to be able to activate your skill 3 and skill 4. But to be fair, it's so negligible, it's not really going to be actually throwing too many issues your way, and it's just essentially might as well just be a damage buff. So yeah, if you are looking to be able to maximize DPS, I would recommend Slayer. If you are looking for an alternative, if you struggle a little bit of being able to reset some of your onslaught stacks, the other one that I would recommend for you is actually go for a 2-piece of Hunter. The reason why is this will then give you the 4% that you need to be able to hit the cap to be able to get to that 90%, and this will get the stacks down to 5.5 seconds per of the onslaught stacks. And then you can also chuck in a 2-piece of the Venom Essence side, and that will also give you an additional toxic skill power, which is then going to help you out with the damage side of things. Obviously not as much as Slayer, but it is still going to be helping you out, and it is going to be reducing those stacks down even further when it comes to your dashes, so it is going to make it much easier for you to be able to reset those, to be able to actually use those a little bit more, and you can reliably just hit one enemy to be able to then still get one of your stacks back. Now shifting on to the weaponry side of things, due to the actual type of damage that you will be dealing with your skills, there isn't really anything that is a standout stat stick. There is something that you can absolutely hold on to, and that's going to be the Blue Beetle. By looking into the unique ability of this, if you use a singular skill, which is going to be your initial dash, so every single one of your dashes, it is going to give you a chance of being able to get Purification, which is going to be removing off those debuffs that you do have on yourself at the time. So if you are burning, for example, you can use this. After you've cast a dash, it will then essentially just remove that burn. So there's a few things that you do have there. I mean, Purification's still fine, there's no issue with it, but it doesn't help help you out anything like offensive wise. It is also a scout rifle, so it is a little bit unwieldy, but what you can absolutely do is go for something that's going to help you out movement wise instead, and you can go for something like a handgun mounting to be able to help you out with last dagger. This one obviously has no movement speed penalties because it is ridiculously light, so you can use this to be able to boost up your initial clearing speeds. Alternatively, you can go for something that has a bit more utility behind it, and that is where the Voltier is going to be my next recommendation, because that is going to be helping you out if you are going into like Void Vessel. You're able to prop all those kind of like shields that do exist in front of you, and that's something that Keelan does struggle without any kind of like good weapons. So you can use the Voltier in your hand, have the mounting that matches up to it. You can use the Voltier to be able to just like instantly pop off those shields and then just dash away, and then you can just clear out the rest of the things in front of you. So there isn't anything that's, like I said, standout, but that absolutely can do some wonders for you. Now, Arche Tuning wise, Keelan currently has nothing to be able to help him out firearm based wise, so there's nothing that's going to be transform his kit, so it's not like other descendants. We might as well just use one single board. He's going to be primarily a mobbing character, so you know, feel free to be able to actually change around a couple of mods if you want to be able to go for a Colossus thing, but he's not the best at that, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that to you in this kind of video. This is going to be the setup I am going to be recommending your way though, because he isn't a crit based character. We're not going to be heading up here, because he doesn't need to rely on MP. We don't need to go for MP recovery. We don't really need to be able to go for these MP kind of side of things to increase that viability. He doesn't have MP, so we're not going to go for MP recovery. So this is going to be the best kind of route that I would suggest for you, is just be able to get yourself a little bit of survival and then just maximize out on skill power, and also going for all the way up here for skill cooldown. Skill cooldown is probably the most important nodes that exist on this board, as that is absolutely going to be shaving off roughly around about 5 seconds off every single one of those stacks when it comes to onslaught, and because it's close to 5 seconds, that's essentially one less enemy that you have to worry about dashing to be able to get you that refunded cooldown back to be able to use that ability again. So being able to go for this kind of setup I do think is going to be best in slot, and that allows you to be able to maximize your DPS as well as everything to do with your cooldown. And of course, the last thing that we always cover when it comes to builds on this channel is going to be the Inversion Reinforcement. Now, there isn't anything fantastic that you can grab here, because most of the nodes when it comes to this are going to be helping out with like MP or MP recovery. So there isn't going to be anything that's going to be absolutely standout or fantastic. But if I just take off these nodes, one of the better ones to be able to go for right off the bat is going to be Biodensity Augmentation. That's going to be increasing your HP, and of course, because you are charging your head first into enemies, there is a good chance that you are going to be taking a few kind of like shots coming your way. So therefore, being able to go for that mod is going to be helping out quite nicely. Because you are going to be probably shooting your gun every now and then, it doesn't hurt to be able to go for a focus round. So in this case, let's just grab the fire one, for example, just to be able to take up that kind of slot, and that will just be able to, you know, as you're firing your Voltier, as you're firing your last dagger, you're just going to be chucking out a little bit more extra damage. It's nothing fantastic, but to be fair, there isn't really anything else that can kind of take the spot. I mean, technically, Adrenaline Rush would probably be quite nice, but that downside and everything like that, you already dash ridiculously quickly, you don't technically need it, and you absolutely can put Brisk Walk onto your weapon of choice to be able to help you out to be able to go a little bit faster when you're going through certain levels. And then the last one that I would possibly recommend when it comes to the reinforcement is going to be Selective Cellular Stimulation, and that's going to be giving you a little bit of HP every 30 seconds when you're in a map, to be able to, you know, give yourself a little bit more sustain just in case you are struggling to be able to find those nice red HP balls that exist on the floor. So this is going to be helping out probably the most. So that's probably going to be the best kind of selection I would probably recommend for this Inversion Reinforcement. Like I said, there isn't anything fantastic. You absolutely can get away by running absolutely zero on this, but if you are looking to be able to maximize things, those are probably the ones that I would recommend. And with all that out of the way, that wraps it up for my breakdown of Keelan's top build right now. For me personally, Keelan is now up there with some of the best mobbing characters we've seen so far, boasting insane speeds and now has the damage to back it up. While I'm still not comfortable enough to encourage him for bossing use, that's not a problem when he loves corridor fights as much as Netflix's Daredevil. But this is the section I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Season 2, Episode 2 so far? Were the buffs enough to be able to entice you to pick up Keelan now? And lastly, which Descendant do you want to see to get a new build guide on next? Let me know all that and more down below. Massive thank you for making your way to the end of the video. As I always say, keep yourself safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on the next video.